We are looking at game number 1 of the ESL Pro Tour North American Open Cup number 183. It is a TvT. In the bottom right, sending out SCVs, he is Clem. In the top left, we do have Byun. So both of them playing on their unideal server. Probably, if I had to guess, going from West and Central. Flip-flopping between the two, or just agreeing to play on one. I'm not sure which one, but it basically he's never played on East if he faced Korea. Just to get that out in the open, right? Just get it out there. They are playing with less than ideal circumstances, but that is what you do when you play in the North American Open Cup as a European and as a Korean. The European player actually has even worse time, though, I think. Although Clem does sometimes have very odd sleep schedules, because the time is way worse for them. For Korea, it's early in the morning, which for gamer hours might not be ideal. But for Clem, this would have been played at something like midnight his time to 5 a.m. his time. Like, very opposite of the typical sleep schedule, right? But I am already making excuses when I don't think I really have to. These guys have actually been playing in a lot of the North American Open Cups, and despite the potential ping problem or the potential hour problem, many of them do this consistently. And Clem did play this Open Cup after playing the entirety of the European Open Cup, so a solid probably 11 hours of StarCraft for this kid's Monday. Because he did get to the finals of the European Open Cup as well. So maybe he's a little eager to get it over and done with. He is cheesing after all, but it is also a very not Clem thing to do, which might be his intention, right? Really catch Byun off guard. Byun is going for a factory expand, which works better against any potential early cheeses, but he does not know what he's up against as of yet. He doesn't know his opponent is proxy roxing, and he doesn't know his opponent is proxying Marauders specifically. So not Reapers, but Marauders. The Reaper is checking around for typical 2-Rax locations. I would say over here is more typical, and over here is fairly typical, so I say that, but it actually is a very odd scouting pattern. It is so completely likely that there's barracks over here, actually. This is like the laziest attempts to scout. And usually it wouldn't matter too much, right? Most of the time you're not being proxied, but in this case it does absolutely matter. 3 Marauders and 2 SCVs about to show up as his command center is on the low ground. I would say that Byun is basically screwed. His factory's even on the front lines as opposed to safely tucked behind because of his barracks positioning from earlier on. He loses a Reaper right off the bat. The Cyclone might be able to escape. However, no, it's not. The supply depot went down way faster than I thought it would. No attempt to repair here. He's actually going to pull the SCVs, go for the mineral walk, but 4 Marauders target firing the Reaper. The grenade did make it. So the SCVs are doing a better job at surrounding him. Now it's 5 Marauders. They might not kill SCVs particularly quickly, but SCVs don't kill them particularly quickly either. 11 SCVs are already dead. Cyclone finally pops out, and that will be the stopping mechanism. The Marauders cannot defeat the Cyclone as long as the high ground is taken by it, which is also a little bit in question. The thing is, if the Cyclone does get tapped by a Marauder slow, it might die. And so... 3 Marauders, 2 of them fresh. That Cyclone's still in danger, man. 20 SCVs went down. Apparently 2 SCVs... Oh, the SCVs he brought, of course. Yeah, so 21 SCVs, leaving Byun at 5. I usually don't fast forward professional replays, but... yeah, I don't think it would be... I don't think we'd miss something really spectacular if I did fast forward. Yeah, okay, there we go, GG. Byun, had he had maybe like 11 workers left over, actually might have still played out that game. But looking back at Mineral Line and seeing 6, like that's too bad. That is too bad. So GG, Clem with a very fast Game 1 victory. Heading on to game number 2, lickety splits. Bottom left it is Clem, top right it is Byun. Byun, hopefully just kind of chuckling at the audacity of the youngin'. You got me. You got me. That's all you can really say about that, right? It was basically a build order loss from Byun. Because if he had scouted it with the Reaper, if he had gone across the map and saw the lack of barracks, well, that probably would have been too late. So let's say instead say if he had SCV scouted and he saw the lack of barracks, he absolutely would have changed his build. You know, so it is absolutely a build or loss as long as you are actually trying to factory expand with absolutely zero scouting. You would have gone for probably a high ground command center with the factory building, because you still have all of those minerals a lot of the time. You can't really change your build order that fast, but... yeah. Anyways, but you obviously still would have had the high ground to work with. You would have probably built a bunker to put your Reapers in, and yeah, it wouldn't have been as bad, right? So you just chuckle at those. It's 1 game out of potential 5, so you have plenty of chances to come back. Clem figuring that 1 proxy worked out pretty well. Why not try another, but a little less committed? This isn't going to be a straight up 2 Rax Reaper proxy. It's going to be 2 Raxes, only 1 proxied. This would still do probably a tremendous amount of damage if it was a 1 Rax expand, if Byun were to be so bold. But the thing is that, you know, TvT, 90% of the games probably are factory expands. It is the basic TvT opener of the last 2 years, something like that. So there is no reason for Byun to try to, you know, almost like rubber band back to being greedy. There's no reason. He should just continue factory expanding. And a factory expand does not take that much damage from the pseudo proxy 2 Rax, I would say, if your control is very good. And Byun's control is supposed to be good. There are still some variations of the factory expand that will make it a better situation or a worse situation. For instance, if it's a reactor first or a reactor after first Reaper or something like that, then it'd be worse. But a lot of the times you are going to see this also being a very typical expansion. You know, the 2 Reapers, then the command center, as the factory finishes to produce a Hellion. GT, thank you very much for that tier 1 sub. So again, I said the Reaper control is very important. If you lose the first Reaper, you could still take too much damage to this half-proxied attack. It's very important that Byun saved his first Reaper. It's still injured, however, as the second Reaper also takes a lot of damage. Actually goes down! Oh, no. I think there was still enough time. That wasn't really the most immediate snowball because the first Reaper was able to get away. If that died first and then the second one died, I mean, forget about it, right? The Hellion would probably save the day, but would be at a big loss of SCVs. So with 1 Reaper alive, an SCV pulled with the Reaper into the Hellion popping out, I think Byun has saved his game. It still might be a complicated game after the fact, as the Reapers of Clem continue to grow. He could always have one hell of a backstab or try and take a direct fight, and sometimes you'll win him. In this case, he did not. Unfortunately, not just losing the 1 Reaper on the high ground, but losing the second as it tried to retreat. Probably stops Clem's momentum entirely. But Clem, not going to give up on the Reaper Hellion pressure. At the very least, he's going to hold on to the contain, be able to get his own command center on location, which will make it fairly far ahead of Byun's. Timing-wise, not that different, but then Byun on the high ground and so far away from his natural. That's an extra crucial seconds. The TvT, will be probably very close. You know, Byun's up 2 workers, and the faster command center of Clem will probably make up exactly for that. Yeah. Clem, I thought, might just go for the contain, but it looks like he really is going to try and bust up the main. Perhaps seeing as there's still no wall, right? He noticed that when he first jumped in. He realized he could still get that concave on the high ground, so he's going to push the issue. 1 Cyclone still might not be enough if the rest of the micro is bad. If the SimCity isn't there to help out, so on and so forth. But it does look like that will be fine. Byun lost some time in his starport, but that's all right. 3rd CC is on the way, actually. Way far behind. There you go. And so Byun is trying to keep his lead in the economy at the very least. Army supply is very similar. Byun coming out with a bit of a heftier army supply, right? He's going to have 2 Cyclones for the map control. And then a Liberator on the way too, so he's going to have some map control pressure on the front lines of his opponent, and then a Liberator backstab behind it, which Clem might not be able to deal with if Clem's thinking only 1 Cyclone, right? Which a lot of times you are. 1 Cyclone to kind of safeguard your overall defense, but 1 Cyclone can't be in 2 places at once. And not many of the units of Clem here shoot up, because he spent so many times building Reapers, not Marines. So this could be good. This could actually do a decent amount of damage. I'm guessing like 2 or 3 SCVs and a lot of lost modding time. If Byun does it, perhaps he does not go out with a Cyclones, fearing a different follow-up from Clem. Because Byun, he might have figured from the timing, I'm not 100% sure, but I think he would have, that it was at least 1 barracks proxied. When it comes to these guys, you know, both of the, especially Byun, right? He Reapers all the time, all the freaking time. Like, he would probably know the seconds of difference of the first and second Reaper and so on. But it could be then a very quick 2-1-1 follow-up. Maybe not the quickest, though, because one of the barracks was proxied. So it's not the most potent follow-up, but it is still something that's going to give your opponent mobility. They're going to have medevacs, you're not. And so keeping your Cyclones at home might be more the priority. And that does seem to be the case. Byun's keeping them at home. Liberator by its lonesome, not nearly as scary. Also, Clem was thinking about, perhaps a little bit of an attack and was holding that high ground anyway. So Byun probably just better off waiting to use that Liberator later on when there is more action on the field. There's more back and forth, and then it might be able to do some damage. I don't know if he could include it in a main attack. I don't think he really could. I don't see one on the way anytime soon. And Clem is about to have his first couple of medevacs. He does have the faster bio-based army, the mobile army, whereas Byun has gone into the typical tech-heavy army, which means defensively he's very well set up. But as soon as he tries to reach out to actually grab his third, which was a lot faster than his opponent's, he's going to have to defend 3 different locations, and that can be very difficult. Clem also with the third CC now. They still are fairly even on the work accounts, but again, Clem with the map control, right? First he had the Reapers to take the natural. Now he has the medevacs to take the third. Means that he might, again, catch up a little bit there. The scan of Byun trying to scout ahead to see if his little Cyclone hit squad can actually do some damage. He manages to grab his opponent's Cyclone, and his own Cyclones will probably live. I was going to say, as long as... No, hold on. No, one Cyclone will die. There's too many Reapers. And that one was bopped. Auto turret could have come down. Interference, but just goes down instead. And the 2 Ravens will live. Clem actually the one to go for the push. I don't think he's actually thinking he can push through the tank line of his opponents, but rather he's thinking I will continue to contain him. So I have the threat of the medevacs that's going to make a tech-based Terran a little shy about moving out in their third CC. But then he also might have an actual contain. But that contain is almost like a fake, right? The medevacs flying around and being able to strike at possibly the main or natural or third just means that you're afraid of people blitzing into your mineral line and killing your SCVs. But with a direct attack where Clem basically says, this is all of my army, it's all right here, you engage or not, Byun's army might actually be okay at that. If he gets a couple of good interference matrix off, if he has defensive advantage, which of course he does, right? A couple more reinforcements faster, then Clem's hold on him doesn't actually last that long. The real threats here would be now the medevacs. Can they go across the map and do a bunch of damage? Raven's actually doing a backstab for Byun, which means they would have been absent from the front lines. Maybe Clem could have contained a little bit longer, because it seems like no matter what he did, he's going to lose 10 SCVs anyways. His army returning back home was way too late for it, and actually Byun with a bit of a double whammy here. Ravens in the natural, 2 medevacs on the third. Clem was the one with the much faster medevacs. He was the one that was in control of the map, but Byun, as soon as he got to medevacs, gets out on the map and takes down Clem's third CC. Easy peasy before combat shields is done. His opponent also does not have combat shields, but you know what? Byun has 1-1. Byun's 1-1 is already done. He takes the Marine fights pretty freaking well. It is just the numbers back at home reinforcing that means that Clem can't chase after this. Clem almost losing a second Raven, too. Or 1 Raven out of the 2, rather. That was a little spicy. Byun's 16 Marines, I think, certainly did their job. Does he have enough army back at home to defend his third CC? He absolutely does, but it's not in location. His Ravens are also out of juice, because, again, they're on the back side. They're on the back lines, doing all the auto turret damage. So his tanks are really what he's got. But his tanks are not in position, and the interference makers from Clem could also be a problem. But Clem cannot win these Marine versus Marine battles. He's still out-upgraded, so he needs to be taking the fights with everything he's got. Interference, which is on the top tank as well. However, that 1 Raven finally got gunned down. Clem moves forward with his tanks, but the SCVs with the Marines coming through for a bit of a concave might be enough. Again, though, Byun not engaging with the full might of his armor. We have 4 tanks that weren't involved at all. This 5th tank was kind of involved, but not even that much. And that is the real trouble for Byun here. He did not try to break out with his entire army, and he never got combat shields. I mentioned that it wasn't done yet. And then, did it get canceled? Wait. Maybe that was Clem's combat shields on the right side, wasn't it? Byun just never got combat shields. Oh, no. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. So his upgrades probably are not as impactful. They certainly aren't when it comes to the tank battles, right? He needs those combat shields to be able to stim and jump on top of the tanks without being one-shot. So that absolutely affected his break as well. Yeah, a bit of a botched game here from Byun with combat shields and a more aggressive placement of his tanks. Basically better defensive placement of his tanks. I think would have been fine. No doubt about it, forgetting combat shields is a straight up mistake from Byun. We can talk all day about how difficult the game of StarCraft is and how difficult facing one of the best Terrans in the world makes it. Even more so, but at the end of the day, if Byun's also a best Terran in the world, he needs to get combat shields on time. 2 tanks taken out of the equation, but 2 still there, and again, combat shields. Upgrades once again favoring Byun, however, so there's the good news. Finally, that narrative is correct. Byun has better Marines, and statement, but he just doesn't have as many. And Clem is pretty much zoning in, you know. He knows he's got the numbers, takes down the tanks defending the natural, goes after the natural CC. Byun was setting up for a big ol' surround, which will not be super effective, I think. Clem's tank, singular, is going to affect the ramp, but what about the backside? Some Marines of Clem trying to hold on over there, and they do help out. Marines over here just slaughtering the units coming down the ramp. No issue. And that is going to be that. Clem not really making it work with the opener, and actually making a huge mistake himself, allowing the 16 Marines of Byun to snipe an entire command center. Gets it done on the counterattack because Byun missed a couple of crucial elements, primarily combat shields, but additionally never fought with his entire army. GG, Clem now leads 2-0. And now potentially the last game of the series in the top right of Ancient Cistern, it is Clem, who feels the cheese. He feels the need to cheese. In the bottom left, it is Byun, who, again, should just continue factory expanding. You know, there is a case to be made about, you know, figuring that a player will not cheese 3 times in a row. There is a case to be made for that. But on the other hand, what player are you facing? First of all, I would say Clem is usually not a cheeser, but in this case he apparently is. What are the circumstances around the best of 5? So it's late at night and Clem's been playing for 12 plus hours. He might just be trying to cheese you out of an entire series. And 3, what is the actual series situation? You're down on your last life. Do you then say, you know what? He's not going to do it again.
Warning.
Yeah, you probably don't. So factory expand, very much necessary. Clem's going to double down on the proxy. 2 barracks once again. It is going to be for Marauders again. Thank you, Kiwi, for the gifted sub. Yeah, I don't think Clem's been failing the whole best of 5 macro game. I absolutely agree. So we do have only 1 gas up and running. It is going to be for a Reaper, but I guess this actually does perfectly time out. I was a little sus on the timing, but it does actually perfectly time out. There you go. So we do have a Reaper attack. And Factory Expand is supposed to deal well with that. Ooh, here's one of the things I mentioned in the last game, didn't I? It depends on what type of Factory Expand it is. Most commonly, it's 2 Reapers opening up, but there's definitely a chance for a Reactor first. And in this case, it is a Reactor first. Now, a Reactor first actually loses against a 2-Rax proxy if the 2-Rax proxy immediately attacks with the Reaper. The problem is that, actually, for the most part, the 2-Rax proxy does not go with the first Reaper. So when it goes for the 2 Reapers, those extra seconds are all seconds that could have been killing SCVs. Like, this 1 Reaper could have been stalling out the factory and then killing maybe 2 or 3 SCVs before the Reapers of Byun showed up. Now it's 2 Reapers killing 2 SCVs, but not stalling out the factory, and now facing, of course, 2 Reapers of his opponents. However, the second Reaper of Clem, the third does come in, takes out the 2 Reapers of Byun, and Byun is in a ton of trouble. Losing his Reapers, all of them, is a big problem, but here's where that factory being delayed is now an issue for Clem. Or not delayed, rather. Clem could have if he had immediately attacked the one Reaper, but how would you know that your opponent's reactor expanding, right? Reactor factory expanding? Can we call it that? Sure. You just don't. And now with 2 Hellions and 2 Reapers, Clem will not be able to match that firepower. If that factory was delayed by, let's say, 5 seconds, this would have been a bit more of a snowball. Clem would at least be ahead by 2 or 3 workers. He actually is very clearly not in the mood to play out some macro TvTs because he taps out, even though this isn't really the end of the game. Most of the time, professional Terrans would not consider this a end game problem. This is because he's tired. I can guarantee it. GG's. Byun defends and wins the 3rd game. All right, so that was not the last game. We are continuing on to this best of 5. In the bottom right, we have Clem. In the top left, it is Byun. The viewer pointed out that Clem's production would have been camped, and that is very true. What Clem had back at home, though, should have been a factory, building or finishing, or done, I'm not exactly sure. And then he would have had the high ground and the wall, so the Hellions weren't going to be a factor. The Reapers still would have, but provided that he can buy a little bit of time to get at least a Hellion out, he wouldn't have necessarily died. And so the reason I said so confidently that this would not usually be considered a dead Terran is because we have seen situations such as that. The 2-Rax Reaper against the Reactor Reaper not find the damage that it was hoping for, but the game's still playing out. And there's one famous example of that, which is the most recent Katowice finals, in which Maru 2-Raxed Oliveira, right? Yeah. And technically, Maru's 2-Rax should have been effective, but he waited for a second Reaper. So Oliveira was able to continue with his momentum by defending and then counterattacking. And yes, that eventually ended in Oliveira's win. It was more complicated than that. So I say confidently that Terrans would generally not tap out from that scenario, but I am not saying that Clem was in an okay position. Clem would have had a difficult time, and it would have been a game in which he was, you know, behind a little bit. And so that's a frustrating game to play, but a very possible one to play. It's a game that you don't play when you're tired and trying to just, you know, win quickly and play this out quickly, right? When it's these circumstances, I'm guessing it's a little more like a ladder situation and less like a tournament situation for Clem, if I had to guess. But at some point, I think Clem's desire to win, his natural competitive spirit, will probably make it so that he doesn't just simply throw 2-Raxes at the guy and hope that they win, right? At some point, I would say every pro gamer that currently is pro gaming in StarCraft 2, they do just kind of get stubborn and say, like, I want to actually win, all right? I swear that Clem could probably join in on, like, a ladder session, and he could play, like, 30 games in a row, and he's like, you know what? My goal is 35. I'm going to play these 5 games, but maybe I'll cheese. Maybe I'll do, like, a 2-Rax for the, you know, the next 2, like, all the 5 games, right? Get him done really quick. And after he loses 2 of them, he's probably like, no. I gotta win. Hold on. I gotta end on a win. Because that's what everyone does, right? End on a win, right? Eventually we'll get one. Like, that to me is where a lot of the current pro gamers currently sit. There's been cases in the past where some pros are much more obviously okay with losing, I guess is, like, it's a bad way to put it, but it's also the best way I can put it. Like, Maru used to be terrible. Absolutely atrocious. You would finally get to cast Maru in some, like, IEM qualifier in 2015 or something like that, and you'd be so excited, you'd be so happy, your viewership would just, like, skyrocket, and then he would 2-Rax twice against a Zerg player, lose, tap out immediately, and then just bounce. And you'd be like, cool. This was absolutely a thing with Maru. 100%. He only started to change when everything was required to be played online. So he started to change a little bit after the qualifier setups were played out differently and tournaments got to smaller scale and there was less tournaments and all the stuff that happened with StarCraft over the last 10 years. But specifically, he really got better when everything was played online because of COVID. He was still not the most dependable online player, even up to 2019. But back in 2015, this was a very common trend for a lot of the Korean pro gamers. Not just Maru, but a lot of the guys who came from Brood War as well. They really did not give it their all when it came to a lot of the qualifiers they played in, which is a bit disappointing. But that's pseudo controversy aside, we do have this TvT now about to really heat up. Byun has gone for a lot of Reapers and a lot of Hanlians with a Medevac. A very aggressive build order. Very aggressive indeed. It must do damage, and I think it will. Because Clem was also doing something aggressive, but it's later on and less dedicated as well. His command center's already done. His opponent has not. Byun basically one-based against a more two-based attack. And while both of them attack fast and fierce, Byun's attacks faster and fiercer. So he just wins. There was actually not much more to it, to be honest. I don't know how Clem could have made this more complicated. Well, okay, Clem could have just defended. I take that back. Clem could have just defended. If he saw this incoming, this is all almost irrelevant. I mean, it's a very comical game, but Byun has won. But if Clem had seen this coming and just been like, you know what, it's going to get too weird for me, I'm just going to go back home and defend, he probably would have been okay. So there is that. But his dedication to his attack has proved lethal. As it is Cyclone v Cyclone. Clem Cyclone is still alive. Maybe I should give the micro potential a little more credit. Banshee also popped out. No one's mining very much. And Clem has actually gotten to 2 orbitals compared to Byun's only 1. Now it's 0 to 0 SCVs, by the way. I don't know who wins this, but Clem just dropped his mules at the worst possible time. If Clem... Oh, you know what? Clem probably should have dropped the mule on the Cyclone. Oh, man. That actually would have been a really good idea. Would it have been enough? Because he only has the amount of money that he has to repair, right? And the gas as well. But if he repairs the Cyclone with his mules, he can lock onto the Medevac. Now, the Banshee might have done the trick as well. Again, that also would have gotten at least 1 shot off on his opponent's Cyclone. However, Byun's Cyclone still dies. Byun somehow managing to get enough money because his mules were allowed to mine in the natural to actually afford not just that Cyclone, but a Wood Mine and a Viking as well. Well, that should just not happen. Fresh Mule does get taken down that time around, but yeah, a bit more mining than was really allowed. It was supposed to be allowed. Now it's a Widow Mine and a Viking. The Viking wins in the sky and on the ground, to be honest, and that is it. GG. No, I actually wonder if Clem was supposed to win that one. That got way more complicated than I was giving it credit for. Byun seemed to attack faster and fiercer, but it's the fact that Clem still had a Cyclone technically alive. If he had repaired it, it certainly would have been more worthwhile than trying to mine, considering his mules were instantly killed. But I understand his attempt to mine, of course. I understand why he just thought maybe if I could just get another round of minerals, I could probably build something else that's useful. But yeah, hindsight 2020. That was an interesting one. GG's. And now we're going to game 5 in probably the quickest TvT ever. The final game in the series might just be as quick as the last one, so I'll try and get all my thoughts out very, very quickly. In the top right is Clem, bottom left it is Byun. Chat bringing up the other potentials of that last game. Yeah, the Banshee might have been able to stay at home for Clem. If he had just left that at home, there was nothing that shut up there. There was Hellions, Reapers, and the Medevac. Nothing shut up to kill the Banshee. He would have been able to kill the Banshee and actually start mining again. And he had 2 orbitals compared to the 1. And he killed all of his opponent's SCVs before the Banshee and Cyclone was in trouble, didn't he? So he could have killed all of Byun's SCVs, evacuated with his Cyclone and his Banshee, left his Reaper and Marine, because why not? And then I think he also would have won. Yeah, the more I think about that game, the more that I think Clem kind of was supposed to win that one. Because even though the attack of Byun was faster, Clem had a slightly more economy to actually bust out those units, right, the time that he did. So it's the kind of the classic, like, if you one base, you're really fast, but you kind of peter out. And if you actually get your foundation set, you don't peter out as much. It's kind of in a very, very small scale in that TvT. And I know I just talked a lot about, whether or not people, stay in games for longer than, I don't know, for longer than just the second or two, right? That they realize they're in a bad spot. I would say that that particular game, the mistakes made from both parties, I'm sure, that would definitely be chalked up to just like how late it is. You know? Whether Clem is actually being a little more flippant or, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, uncaring about this series or not is something that I cannot actually say. And if I'm wrong, then Clem would take issue with it, right? But I could confidently say that mistakes made at 4 in the morning and 7 in the morning, whatever it is between the two, that is nothing but understandable, right? So that's probably what that last game was. But I was trying to say, while that game got prepped, that Clem would be the type of player to me who would say, you know what, for once I'm going to actually like just go ahead and take the L. When I do, I'm not going to play it out and see what happens. Because most of the time he does. I would say that. Most of the time Clem really does stay in. Not quite fantasy GG, but he does stay in a lot of games. But I could see him being like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to admit defeat whenever I think I've fallen behind. And then he does get to a game 5 and is like, I want to win. I'm gonna play serious now. Because he might just be doing that. And I think Byun could also be the exact same person. It's just that Byun has been less prone to cheesing in this best of 5. He has been more so on the defensive. We'll never know if all of these games of Byun were supposed to lead into a 2-base all-in. We have no idea. Because the games end too soon. Or they get weird too soon. But yeah, it seems like Clem is the one who is playing differently because of the circumstances. Now, as he goes into an expansion with Hellions, he might be going back to thinking, oh, he's going to Marauders? No. Okay. So he might be thinking, like, I just want to win. Like, let's play, like, a more normal game and try to... And not try to just win as fast as possible. Because this is a little bit more normal, but still, of course, a bit different. Hellions, right? With the Raven in the back, Hellions in the front, perhaps. Byun is going into a 2 barracks build. So he went to Barracks Factory, but instead of going into the very typical starport, he instead adds on a 2nd barracks. So he's going for a faster bio, stim, medevac composition as opposed to the tech-heavy composition that TvT generally is. I wondered if that was misplaced for a hot second. It was not. Clem should be doing something with these Hellions soon. You don't just build Hellions for no reason. The Hellions are very good defensively if Byun was doing another kind of mass Reaper strategy. But, you know, that's true. They do have to do something. They can't just be made just to defend and then defend nothing, right? They gotta go across the map and at least try. The Marine high ground concave will stop the Hellions momentarily, but will certainly not be the end of it. Hellions were looking perhaps just for Reapers or Hellions of his opponent. He didn't find any, so he retreats with them. I think if he had run across the map as soon as he had 4 Hellions, this would have been a little weird. The Marine count now is fine, but back when it was 6 Marines here, might have still been okay. The concave really does screw with the Hellion potential, doesn't it? 3 SCVs went down to Clem's SCV auto turret harassment. Byun's finally ready to go with his actual build, by the way. All of this has just been waiting till he got to the medevac, something that Clem now scouts. He's actually going to be able to take on many of these Marines, unloading 2 by 2, I suppose, because it was 2 medevacs. It's still not ideal. And the Hellions weren't going to do very much the longer this game went on, right? So sacrificing themselves to tear down the 16 Marines to only 7 is certainly worth it. And now he knows what his opponent is doing, because up until that point, he actually had no follow-up scout. So now he knows, okay, he's going to be trying to be a little more mobile, and he's going to have the faster stim, the faster combat shields. I got to play a little more reserved. Flip of the situation of, what was it, game 2, I think? And as we recall, whatever game that was, it's one where Byun was probably bringing it back. He sniped an entire 3rd command center without any consequence, but then he forgot combat shields and was not fighting with an entire army. So he kept on getting locked out of taking a 3rd base. He was contained, he had to break it, his break was unsuccessful, and the game ended in Clem's favor. Clem, assuming that he simply does not forget combat shields, will already have a much better time. That is assuming, though. It is a very odd time for them to be playing. 2 fake medevacs. I like that. Going in for a little bit of a scout. Not that Clem would be prone to playing mech, especially with the way that these games have gone so far. It seems like speed is the priority here. But yeah, still seeing it. And then you could also maybe tell if they're still producing Ravens versus Vikings versus medevacs. Do they already have 5 barracks of production versus 3? Do they have a 3rd CC? Are they 2 base all winning me? All these things that medevacs are scouting. Reaper on the 3rd. Auto turrets in the main. Auto turret's going to kill the Cyclone. So the Ravens might have even more potential later on. However, this missile turret should be enough to deter them, and Clem should probably be just consolidating his forces again, because actually Clem's army is just better right now. The problem with moving out, though, is the obvious backstab potential of what Byun is doing. Hello. Stupid lights just do this randomly. The backstab potential of the medevacs, but also the concave potential. This is a big map, right? And while your tanks might dominate should they be sieged in a prime location, they will not dominate if you just get surrounded by a bunch of Marines that are better upgraded than you as well. So that's why Clem's not the one who's really supposed to be moving out. But his army supply being so solid means that he should have a very easy time defending at home his 3 bases. Of course, he can't really tell what his army count is, right? But he does know that he completely stopped the first 2 medevac drop. That was a momentum breaker and an actual kill on the Marine counts, which was the scariest thing coming out from Byun. So Clem really is winning. And wasn't exactly his decision, but he's also winning with the more passive defensive play. So, again, I can't confirm it. I am not Clem. I'm not in his brain. I'm friendly with him, but I'm not friends. You know, I don't know his heart and soul. But I really feel like this is a series where he was like, if I could just get this done with instantly, that's great for me. Okay, shit, I can't get done instantly. Let's try really, really hard. I feel like we're finally at that game 5. I'm going to try really, really hard to win. This combat shield's not that much later than Byun's. Should be prepared for whatever attack Byun would actually set up, which doesn't look like he's really setting up an attack. He's still dividing his army and looking for multiple attack angles. Leaving his tanks back at home to defend anything that Clem might be doing, because you do not want to forget your opponent's potential medevac drops, right? I saw Clem's vision go around the map. He was looking at both his Liberator and his Liberator. Just kidding, 2 Liberators. Okay, so 2 Liberator play has kind of come into TvT. It's this little decision made that's not necessarily the biggest of deals, and it happens on 3cc, so it's like, even if it killed like 16 SCVs, it's not the end of the world. But it is taking away your medevac and Viking power. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. And, well, 1 Liberator already went down because there was a very well-timed supply depot scouts. I don't know what happened to the second one. Did it just run into the Liberator? Or the missile turret? No. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Where'd you go? I don't know. Marines on the left side of Clem just pushed back Byun's drop. Whatever it was. Wasn't really a drop. Oh, his Liberator's back at home. Oh, it's right there. Hiya. Maybe later. Or perhaps with the main push. It's definitely not bad to have with the main push, especially because Byun has never gone into Vikings. Something that I think can be done after a while playing into this bio medevac strategy, right? You don't just literally stay on it. Eventually TvT goes into air superiority. But Byun has only chosen to go into Marines and medevacs and tanks. He is full on 8 racks as well. Very dedicated to the ground army. And so Clem's army is still, I brought this up 2 or 3 minutes ago, his is still better in proper position, with his tanks sieged up and his Ravens involved. It is not better if his tanks are unsieged, as Clem is still behind those upgrades after all, 2-2 to 1-1. But my goodness, are his tanks strong. Liberator in a fantastic position as well. Byun was looking to take advantage of the cliff. Got the cliff taking advantage of him. And now the tanks have to withdraw, which means that Clem can just inch a little bit farther forward. Now, Clem should recognize what Byun is doing. There's 0 Vikings on the field. So many Marines as well. And so, the potential of a base trade or surround is incredibly high. Byun has to do those things to actually wiggle himself out of the situation. And the Zelnaga, I believe, was taken. Clem even trying to save the Marine, maybe show that he didn't see it right. knows the attack is on the way. He's going to siege up his tanks on the front lines, hold position, just leave it there, not worry about it, focus entirely back at home because he saw this attack incoming, cancels his would-be 5th base, lifts his 3rd, sieges up his 2 tanks. Now 2 tanks might not be enough, but Byun does not know what's behind those 2 tanks. What if there's a tank up here? What if there's a tank over there? He can't bust up that. And Clem has actually held beautifully while still continuing to teach his opponent. The 3rd CCs both lifted and in trouble. Byun now being overstimmed as well. His medevacs are not healing enough. Most of them went with the main army, actually adding in a drop potential, which again, Clem is somewhat prepared for. However, not as much as he could be. Vikings not in position. Missiles are just a little bit off and not enough reinforcements in the main base. Byun forces the issue and might find some success. Actually, I don't think he will. This has already gone so terrible. Way too many reinforcements available. And now the upgrades are even. If that's what Byun was hoping to take advantage of, he was incorrect on that. And in fact, it is now Clem who is doing the much better dropping in the main base. It's not making too much headway, but it has a lot more potential. 3rd CC still not mining for both sides, but I think Clem's closer to getting his 3rd CC down. Byun's on his 4th, which is an orbital, actually. Clem went for the far safer planetary. So Byun is still mining like some, but definitely not as good as Clem's, and his 3rd CC just got knocked down. He's going to give up the position here, realizing he might be overstaying his welcome. After all, Byun is still producing with some income, so his defender's advantage would eventually kick in, just more units at that particular location. So Clem backs away, consolidates his army, now all grouped up, all together. His army is bigger than his opponent's. He had more stable mining and more stable production. And the upgrades did not exactly go to plan here for Byun, who absolutely would have preferred finishing +3 attack first. But his +3 attack is just seconds away from finishing, but not yet. And he runs into what he thought was maybe only Marines. A couple of tanks managing to get the shots off. Interference, anti-armor missile could also be really helpful here. That should be exactly what Clem's looking for, I would say. Maybe interference switches actually, because there's so few tanks, they would be quite impactful. I'm looking at it. I'm looking. I'm not getting it used yet. It is interference matrix. All right. Anti-armor missile, I think, would also be very effective, but both are good here. And Clem continues to push forward. Byun, it's a bad situation when this happens, right? You're bleeding off units. You are unable to really stall this out. I mean, you're slowing it down, but you're not stalling it. And you're not counterattacking and run buying like you would prefer to be doing. And as soon as you do, well, Clem notices that, right? There's no mystery here. For Byun, mystery is good. Where are my army units? You don't know. What am I going to do? And every time that Clem knows, it's simple evacuation process into sieging up his reinforcing tanks. Actually, one of the worst case scenarios for Clem right now would be being maxed out and not having enough tanks back at home. But right now, I think it's very visible to Clem that he doesn't have to reinforce. His army on this side of the map is once again good enough to defeat Byun's reinforcements, and his reinforcements are good enough to defeat Byun's attacking army. That's what happens when you're up 30 army supply, right? Byun is doing what he has to do to try and make this game work, but it's not necessarily guaranteed to be effective. He does have the upgrade lead here, and I think the numbers as well. Clem underestimating that particular fight, could have had his tanks sieged up to retreat to. Instead loses, well, not all of them actually. This one's still alive, actually got a couple of shots, really quite helpful in fact. And this one adding in, just one more shot would have done the trick, but reinforcements trickle in. And even without those upgrades, eventually Clem's defender's advantage will kick in. 3 Marines left over there for Byun. 2, I'm sorry, will end up evacuating. They get saved. But Clem is still hitting Byun's economy. He took down the 4th base. He's looking to take down the 3rd. SCVs getting slaughtered. Clem actually on a 5th base. Again, a planetary, very safe, and also extremely useful against exactly what Byun is doing. I mean, planetaries are always safer than orbitals. That's just logic. But they're also especially good against someone who's mainly relying on Marines. Sometimes orbitals lifting against a tank push is actually preferable, right? But if it's only Marines, Byun cannot crack a planetary. So Clem is really, I mean, he's doing the normal thing, yes, but he's also really shoring up his offenses against Byun's entire game plan. Byun does manage to push out and is actually on the chase, killing a couple of tanks in those medevacs. Yet the supplies still remain in favor of Clem. Byun actually may be thinking, hey, isn't this game supposed to be a little bit closer? What's going on here? Now scans that top left base and realizes he's in a lot of trouble because, again, he cannot do anything about it. The best he could do is put Marines behind, and that's something, but Not the best case scenario. I don't believe Clem has noticed he's down an upgrade. He must have thought that he had gotten his +3 armor, because he really should be starting that up. It's not the upgrade you want if you had to choose, right? But it's still an upgrade that you want. But I think everything else in this game might still lead to Clem's victory anyways. As long as his 7 tanks are involved, his 4 Vikings bully away the medevacs of Byun, Clem's army is better. And actually, Byun's army is a little injured from earlier fights, just dragging it back into the tank fire. Byun knows this is his last chance, so he takes it, but it does not work out. Clem with the final 3-2 victory, and still one of the faster best-of-5 TvTs you'll ever see. Did kind of just go back to playing normal once it got a little bit dangerous, didn't he? But GG's. Fun, best-of-5 between the two. Great display of cheeses, aggression, defense, so on and so forth. But it is the European who will win. Europe. Hope you guys enjoyed the cast. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and all that good stuff down below, and I'll see you guys later.